Mine, forever mine.
Hey, Hallie, how are you doing?
Hi, it's Matthew, yes?
It's Matthew indeed. Yes, it is.
Let me just move this. Hang on a second. I'm just going to put the lampshade back on this light.
All right. So, hi.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Yeah, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. So, like I said, you're in Cleveland right now for the film festival. You said you're in a kind of a bizarre hotel. Why do you say that?
Oh no, the hotel's really lovely. This is what always happens when you decide as an actor to go away somewhere. So, like, I'll have a great time at the Cleveland Film Festival. En route on the plane at 6 p.m. in the evening, I get a big acting audition.
Oh.
And they want them back like 4 pages long, and they want it back in like 8 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And not only have you got to learn it, learn the accent, find someone to perform it with, you're now in some random hotel room trying to think, how do I turn this into an audition studio? So you start taking lamps down, pictures down.
Yeah, well, I'm sure they'll understand like the situation, but at the same time, you want to make it the best because it's an audition tape. So it's
you would think they always say, yeah, we do understand, but they don't really.
I'm not surprised to hear that. But so the short film, was it premiering this week? Because I feel like it started like on the April 2nd, if I'm not mistaken.
So actually, The Pearl Comb has its American premiere tonight.
Tonight, okay.
At the festival, yeah. So we're in the After Dark section, yeah.
Awesome. Well, I saw it, so congratulations on the short film. I really like it. I thought it was such a neat, like, Victorian folk horror, right up my alley. And there's a freaking mermaid, so I love that. So basically, what's the story about? Like, just so people know, it's I'm gonna simplify it, but there's a doctor. He's investigating claims that there's this fisherman's wife who's miraculously curing people of her village. So as she's telling the story, you kind of realize that there's some bigger things, bigger forces involved. I really like the atmosphere, the costumes. So really great job on that. But first thing first. Thank you for making a great mermaid film because we don't get enough of them, and there's a lot of things to explore there with the kind of like the myth of a mermaid. So why did you personally wanted to make a film about that?
Well, I heard about mermaid legends on holiday in Cornwall with my daughters, and the legends that I heard were that the mermaids were very sinister, and we're used to Disney princesses being mermaids.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my things that I'm into is magic generally. And whenever you quite often look at old stories, they're usually a lot more terrifying than what we grown up on, because they've obviously turned legends into children's stories. Mm-hmm. So I like trying to find the absolute authentic original version of a mermaid. And as far as I can see, they were pretty ruthless. Yeah. So and weirdly, you haven't really seen that. There's a bit of it in the Pirates of the Caribbean, a little bit of it there, but even still, not massively so. It was still done in a slightly comedy way.
Yeah, because when you're dealing with a mythical creature like a mermaid, there's some expectation and some kind of like preconceived idea. So how did you manage to make it your own while kind of trying to do it justice?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, the word siren means to be alluring, really. It's synonymous with a mermaid. So I thought I do want the mermaid to be alluring to men, but I wanted to subvert the stereotype. So she is a vampiric killer and she lives off people. And also when we meet her, she looks a little bit cold and a bit bedraggled, as though she actually needs to eat. A bit like, when you see a lion in The Lion King, they look really beautiful.
Yeah, and she did as well. She's extremely seducing in the way that you see it as first. So it's kind of like those conflicting feelings that you have when you see it.
Yeah, so I kind of wanted her to be kind of beautiful, but a little bit hungry looking, a little bit, worn out, like a lion in the wild when they look a bit skinny and they need to eat. So that was the plan. And then the other expectation I wanted to subvert was that the man that is lured in by her, Looty, played by the brilliant Simon Armstrong, he's actually not lured in by her. And then she can't handle it. So she's doing all of her usual, I'll give you money, I'll give you riches, I'm seductive, and he's not bothered. So that was what led to a more interesting scene, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say too much, but there's this moment where he kind of like he smells, he sees his house at the back, and he's like, "Oh, there's this supper waiting for me at home." Like, why would I go in the water with this kind of like you said, a vampiric creature? I think like his subconscious was telling him like something's going wrong. But I like that you like clearly say he's not being allured. Like it's obviously just kind of
Well, I mean, she's kind of putting a spell on him, and she's trying to lure him in, but he manages to snap out of it. Whereas I think a lot of younger men probably wouldn't have. And also another thing is that I tried to show is that Looty and his wife Betty are very happily married.
Yeah,
that's the other thing. So again, I wanted to just subvert that expectation that the siren always wins.
No, and the mermaid, I mean, it's a mesmerizing creature, and the sequence involving the mermaid are also very hypnotizing. Kind of like you feel like you're getting under a spell. So, what was your approach with first crafting the sound? Because that was very important part. So, I see that you worked with a siren singer, if I'm not mistaken, Beth and Nash. So, how did that materialize? What was your approach with the sound and everything?
Well, sound is something I'm the least knowledgeable about, but I worked with a company called Pindrop who were fantastic, and we knew that we wanted a great siren calling, but I just wanted it to be something that you hadn't really heard before. Usually they have sort of sweet innocence to them, and then the sound that we came up with, it was based on a song called A Siren's Lure by a dance DJ called Alex Endelsey, who we licensed his version. I could never get hold of the guy, so I was really upset about that because I wanted him to know he's in it. But then I got a singer to re-record it and just make it a little bit more haunting.
Yeah, no, because I really feel like that was brilliantly done, but we'll try to get his name over there and see if we can see the final product. We'll stay on the subject of the moment while we're on it, but the production design is also a crucial part when you're doing like folk horror. And I thought the team did a fantastic job with those Victorian costumes, the location, and most specifically the props. So how did you collaborate with the props department? Because it has an important significance of the film, like just talking about the pearl comb itself, but all those little props, those details. What was your collaboration with the props department?
Well, it's just like lots of chats, and then I did a mood board, but not too sophisticated. Like I do think that I had a great production designer, a girl called Isabel Pirillo, and you just need to know that they're sort of on the same page with you, and then you trust them. So I would collate, like 20 or 30 pictures and show them to her, and then she would find the actual props, and then she would show me the area that she was within, and I felt, to be honest, that we were very much in sync from the get-go. So it was relatively easy, but the best way to do it is to sort of show someone 20 pictures, and then they come back with theirs, and then take it from there.
Because are you passionate about that era? I feel like you try to visit, you go back in time a lot when you do your short film, because your last one was also set in that era. So you seem to be very knowledgeable about that. Is it you kind of like bringing your passion and your experience there about that? Because I feel like you brought your part to the table there.
Yeah, I feel like I'm just. It's not so much that the error, it's more just the creating the atmosphere for mystery. And I think it's sometimes easier to go back in time, because it's like now, one of the worst things that ever happened to a horror film is probably the advent of a mobile phone, because it creates so many plot flaws for a modern day horror. The great thing about filming something in the 1890s in the countryside is no one lived there. Only a few people lived there. Everyone was very suspicious. There were no you know, Richard Dawkins selling books about atheism. You know, just like it's a lot easier to create a creepy atmosphere. So
I absolutely agree with that, and just remind me of what Robert Eggers recently said. He was like, "I would be so fucking depressed if I would make a movie set in a modern time. I don't even know I would have shoot like a phone. That's the most depressing thing I ever heard." And I was like, you know what? He's kind of right. Yeah.
yeah, I'm working on a feature that is part in the past for the backstory and then part set now. And there are bits with a phone, and I don't, yeah, it's there's such a big part of our lives, but it's so boring to show.
It's boring.
Like, what do you show? Or do you bring the text on screen? Now you look a bit like Star Trek. It's like, oh, it's all a bit weird, you know.
Yeah, and I feel like it's all those attempts at bringing this to life are not gonna age well. So I see some shows that are shot like 10 years ago, and they're trying to incorporate text messages, and it already looks like it was shot 20 years old. It's dated. Like it's something about that that's so challenging. So I do understand why you would take that setting, go back in time just to get like
Yeah.
feel like you make it more grounded, maybe, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I just think it's if you're already buying into that it's the past, I think you're more willing to accept a supernatural creature.
Yeah.
It's a bit easier, a bit easier.
Actually, very much so, because the old story wouldn't work in a modern time, but I like it that way. So good job on that. Last thing on a technical level, the visual effects. I guess that must be very challenging. There's this sequence where the fisherman kind of gets under a spell, but there's some visions. I thought that was fantastic. Kind of the way I see it is kind of like this visions of Atlantis, this perfect utopia under the water. That's kind of what she's trying to sell him. So
Yeah.
how did you manage to bring your vision to life? Because that must have been very challenging because it's big scope. Yeah.
Yeah, that was very, very challenging. So yeah, that bit is he has been sort of mesmerized by her, not fully hypnotized, but mesmerized,
Mhm.
and we're seeing what she's telling him as she's trying to lure him to her underground palaces. And what I did is I took we shot it on a wide reverse, and I told the VFX that we want to subliminally fill in the sky. I mean, it was very hard to explain this to the cameraman because you know they're always like focus on the person. It's like no, they're in the background, and we're going to be shown as much sky as possible. It was all very counterintuitive, and then I originally I collated again in my rough edit loads of images from the internet, and I just plonked them in like that, and then they got it, and I just said, just you got to match the words to the visuals, and then we just played around it, and unfortunately the company that I work with, they really got into it, so that was one of their favorite bits. So
Why did you say unfortunately?
no, I meant fortunately.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah. They got really into it, and that little sequence is almost a separate little story in of itself, really.
Oh, it's one of my favorite sequence. Well, the first one is the one on the lake. So that's also a
Yeah.
place where I was like, how the hell did you pull it off? So I'm just gonna ask you the question. How did you pull that off?
Yeah, so that was a nightmare. I mean, basically, I would say to anyone, don't shoot a mermaid movie because, I mean, you know, this was my directorial debut, even though I've done other shorts and things. But if I'd have known, I probably wouldn't have done it. We had to film at the location that you see, and she's wearing a green screen tail, and then we comp in the tail. But it was very hard to get the movement right for that movement to look believable, and also the transition from her body into the scales is very hard.
Yeah.
Very hard thing to pull off. But the other thing that we did is when she's standing, she's actually standing in a swimming pool, which we had to comp with the other actor. So that was very hard to get right, particularly the eye lines between the two. So that was tricky because the actual pond that you see is probably about this deep in reality. Yeah. So very, very tricky. Yeah.
And in terms of lighting, that's also like I guess there was a lot of post, VFX and post production related things to do with that shot.
Our DOP actually timed the sun on the day, and then we were the pool that we shot her in. We that was also in Penzance down the road in like an outdoor pool.
Okay.
I think one of the best things to do if you're going to be comping water is that you've got to do both of them outdoors. You're matching the natural. We really looked at using indoor pools at studios, but it would be so much work to get the lighting. Yeah.
Because I mean, it's so ambitious. Because working with water in terms of visual effects, I feel like it's the most challenging thing ever. I mean, you look at James Cameron, that's like kind of like the apex of
Yeah.
like working underwater. So pulling that off with, I don't know what the budget of your film was, but pulling that off in a small scale, that was insane. And you talked about the green, the tail being well, kind of like
Mm.
not a green screen, but you know what I mean.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
the scales, the details there, wow, good job.
Yeah, it's about 7 people worked on the tail. So, but fundamentally, there's an artist, and then there's the animators, and the
Mhm,
VFX guys actually doing, getting everything pieced together.
mhm,
Um, but it took almost 6 months to effectively do the tail, really.
mhm.
Again, if I'd have known any better, probably wouldn't have done it. So,
You mentioned your interest in magic. Yeah, I guess that was just like movie magic at work. So I guess it's satisfying when you see the final end product, right?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And also, where possible, um, although we do see a lot of the mermaid, I tried to do that thing where we get the one big shot of her at the start,
Mhm,
and then once that's established, we're only seeing little glimpses of her here, there,
mhm,
and everywhere. Yeah.
mhm, mhm. It takes place also in 1893, so at a time where medicine was kind of like very experimental, and there's a message about women practicing medicine and how they were perceived. So what was your angle there? Was that important for you to incorporate that in the story?
Well, for me, that was the bit that elevated the whole short to being a lot more than just a horror film.
Hmm.
So it ends up being commentary about women in education and women in work. And I try to find themes like that, but I don't like crowbarring themes in for the hell of it.
Hmm.
But what happened was my partner said she read it at the time and it wasn't in. She goes, they didn't let women practice in those days. It was very rare to find a female doctor. And I started doing some research and I discovered an article about the Edinburgh Seven, who were the first 7 women in Britain to qualify as doctors. And the medical community tried their hardest to stop them from practicing. And then when I discovered that, I immediately came up with a new ending. And that's how I managed to incorporate it all. But I feel that you find these things through constant failure.
Hmm.
I couldn't find an ending for the film, and then, my partner read it, and then she goes, "Oh, have you thought about it?" And then bang, we suddenly came up with the ending, and that was it.
I think the ending itself makes sense because anyway, I don't want to spoil it, but it kind of like goes full circle
Yeah,
into the whole thing. And I just rewatched it before our interview, and there's some little nuggets at the start of the film that kind of like hints at
yeah,
what's gonna happen. So
yeah,
that's
yeah,
that's very well made. But yeah, I did feel like you had something to say, but I didn't feel like I was being hammered with like a hammer on my head about like the themes about women in medicine. It was just like kind of like in the backdrop, but also as much as important that the film that you were doing. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I think there's whenever there's a message or a theme, I think Chris Rock, the comedian, who I'm a big fan of, he says, I'm here to make you laugh. I'm not here to preach."
Hmm.
And but at the same time, Chris Rock is probably certainly in the top 2 or 3 best comedians in the world because of the quality of his insights
Hmm.
before he gets to the joke. And so, I'm not a particularly political person or anything.
Hmm.
I'm more interested in psychology, but it was like the perfect theme to encapsulate the movie. And also, I thought it made the Doctor's role more interesting. That I find it entertaining. I used to love watching the TV series Mad Men,
Hmm.
and half the entertainment comes from watching people in the '60s and how they spoke to women, how they treated animals, children. And we just look back. I remember there's a great scene in Mad Men where there's 2 pregnant women having martinis, and she goes, "Yeah, I'm 6 months now." And we're all like, you just watching it go, Jesus Christ.
It should be legal.
But it's better to just show it rather than to comment on it. I think, that for me anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, you were talking earlier about the relationship between the wife and the fisherman. Simon Armstrong, I mean, Armstrong is a brilliant actor. He plays in Game of Thrones. It's not your first collaboration with him, but would you say that your background as an actor kind of helps you direct actors, especially experienced one like Mr. Armstrong?
Well, Simon's is an incredibly talented man and can usually do things in like one or two takes. It's incredible. He's much more experienced actor than me. You know, he's probably been doing theatre longer than I've been alive, I would imagine.
Yeah.
I think for me that you already cast people you know who can do it. So you've already got the people you know who you think are right for the role. And then I think that one of the big insights you get as an actor yourself is we're all a little bit terrified. We're all thinking, am I doing it wrong? Am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? So really, I think that I'm used to reassuring everybody, basically, and making people feel comfortable. I've certainly done movies where there was a DOP and a first laughing and joking and eating sandwiches, and 2 seconds later I had to be on the floor with a bullet wound screaming, and it's ridiculous. They're not really thinking that I'm trying to get in the zone. So I do think in terms of, you know, what actors have to do before the start of a scene, say, and just being sensitive to that. But really, it's the fact that we all feel very nervous before a take. It's really that simple. So you have to be very careful of how you're talking to your actors.
Well, the little example you gave is just a perfect like showcase of when you're an actor, you know how it feels to have like all those people watching it. You're just very vulnerable. And if you have like the DP, like you said, laughing and eating his sandwich before the emotional scene, I mean, that kind of shows like as an actor, when you go to another project, and especially if you go behind the camera, you know how it's gonna work. And I feel like that's why a lot of actors become successful directors.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many sides to being a director, though. You know that I mean, I definitely come from an actor writer background, but other guys come from a producer and DOP background. And they're all important, you know. They're all important. So there's a lot to get right, really.
Yeah. No, everyone is important on a movie set, and as you grow with your experience and everything, I guess you'll get better at it because this was, you said, your first big directorial debut. Is, you know, what's next for Ali Cook? What are you cooking?
Well, I'm working on some more shorts, and then I do have a feature as well that I'm working on as well.
So you can't say too much about it, I guess. You're like keeping a...
Well, it's another folk horror. For some reason, I seem to be good at doing folk horrors and mystery and fantasy. It sort of appeals to me, and I feel as though it doesn't feel too hard for me to... I think I can handle expectation, surprise, and suspense. I feel like those are the areas I know what to do, I think. So
yeah, I honestly think you put the finger on it because the whole concept of your short film, I really adored it. I mentioned like we were not getting enough mermaid films, and that was just like boom, putting like the hammer on the nail. Really loved it. And also just in terms of your vision, I saw a lot of talent there, just bringing on like those wide shots, those big visual effects, like heavy scenes. I don't know what was the budget, but I feel like it seems expensive. So, I mean, if you just manage to do that by bringing your experience and your vision, thumbs up to that.
Oh, cheers. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm going to let you go because I feel like you're pretty busy. You mentioned you were doing an audition tape as well.
I am doing here I am writing down and learning my lines as we go.
I'm going to let you go. One more thing I want to ask. You mentioned like all those classic Disney princess mermaid movies, but there's some mermaid movie I love. Have you ever seen Night Tide with Dennis Hopper?
No, I've not.
You need to watch that. Night Tide, yeah. So it's a fantastic film, shot in the 60s, low budget, really great film. I feel you should watch it. I'm surprised you didn't watch it, so I would recommend that to you.
Oh yeah, I'll check it out, yeah.
Awesome. Have a great time, Ali. I wish you all the best at the festival. Tonight is the premiere, so let's go.
Yeah. Cheers, thank you very much.
Have a good one. Thanks.